Welcome to the final Club World Cup fantasy team selection of this tournament as we approach Matchday 7, which is its own entity, as I've highlighted in my recent podcasts. So between Matchdays 1 to 6, you can make substitutions and change the captaincy between different games, but we've only got one match remaining, so that means once the deadline is locked and the game starts, we can't make any changes, and the starting 11 is what you're left with by the end of this tournament. Obviously, if you have someone who doesn't feature in that 11, then automatic subs will take place, but you just want to be in control of your transfers and make sure that the starting 11 is finely tuned to the way you exactly want it. And you have to be very conscious of the balance between Paris Saint-Germain and Chelsea, the two finalists, whether you want to go all in on PSG with 8 players and then free from Chelsea, because yes, we can pick 8 players from the same club at this stage of the competition, and we have 6 free transfers to optimise our teams, and the bench is completely irrelevant. On screen you can see my mini league. You can still join and all your points from Matchday 1 will count. A big shout out to everyone who has joined the mini league already, especially those near the top. It is a very competitive battle there for that number 1 spot, and I wish you all the best of luck to finish this season and this tournament as strongly as possible, and keep your eyes peeled for UCL Fantasy and FPL content, which will return very soon. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, and also the notification bell so you're always up to date with my content, whether it's those fantasy games I just mentioned, UCL Fantasy, FPL, the World Cup next year. I also covered the latest edition in Qatar, the Euros, and of course the Club World Cup adds yet another fantasy game to the collection, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow for the deadline stream, the final piece of content for this tournament. And it has been a pleasure covering this competition, and very soon, with the return of FPL in the next week or two, I'll be covering that game once more. The semi-finals in Matchday 6 didn't take place that long ago, so I'll provide a review of my performance before delving into my transfer plans for the Club World Cup final. And in goal, I had Robert Sanchez, who was booked but kept that clean sheet against Fluminense, and Chelsea have only lost 1 game in this competition. Just like Paris Saint-Germain, the 2 finalists have been strong throughout, and both of them kept a clean sheet in Matchday 6. I did have Donnarumma on my bench, who outscored Robert Sanchez once again by a solitary point. So if I didn't buy Robert Sanchez, I would have probably gone in the direction of Chalobah and had 2 differential Chelsea defenders to get 9 pointers from them, whilst also getting an extra point from Donnarumma. But now I have the luxury of choosing between Sanchez and Donnarumma for Matchday 7 in the Club World Cup final. But having 6 transfers at our disposal kind of negates that sort of advantage, because it is so easy to build the optimal 50-man squad and starting 11 for Matchday 7. In my defensive line, it was quite mixed bag, but Hakimi once again has just been a brilliant Club World Cup fantasy asset, building upon his form from UCL Fantasy. That's another double-digit haul in this competition, whilst Fran Garcia got -1 points as Real Madrid were battered by Paris Saint-Germain with a 4-0 loss in the end, and it could have been even more by the end of that game. Malo Gusto was a differential at the time with 4.7% ownership, but is almost doubled now going into the Club World Cup final. He got that 9-pointer against Fluminense. I was also quite set on Chalobah, Tosin Adarabioyo, and different Chelsea options like Cucurella, who is more template, but only Gusto and Chalobah really qualified for the scouting bonus actually, and Levi Colwill is another one who is now back from suspension. He was in my original team, as you'll see very soon, but my defensive line was quite inconsistent overall. And to be honest, it was even worse in this position, with no returns amongst 5 players, and some of them are premiums like Kvaratskhelia, Palmer, and Jude Bellingham. My first captain was Palmer, and Joao Pedro was my vice. I probably should have gone in a different direction there, and that was a 10-point swing in the end. Those who the maximum captainship would have gained a decent number of points from that booster, but I've got that in store for Matchday 7. So in the end, I got Palmer and Doué completely wrong, and Hakimi was the other one I was considering from that Real Madrid PSG game, but I thought Los Blancos would score, and I got that prediction off the mark, and that also cost me several points in the process. So as you can see, a few changes in my goalkeeper and defensive line coupled with the captaincy have led to a somewhat disappointing week in Matchday 6, but I still think the likes of Doué and Palmer were good captaincy options on paper, but they have been very inconsistent in this tournament and throughout 2025 in terms of goal contributions, especially in the case of Palmer with the hefty expectations he has set from the last year. In my forward line though, thankfully, I bought Joao Pedro, otherwise this would have been a terrible week for me, and also very well played to those that captained him. I think that was a great choice for the opening game against his boyhood club, Fluminense, but Vinicius Jr. has been an absolutely poor pick from the beginning. He only did well in matchday 3 against Red Bull Salzburg, and even the likes of Kylian Mbappe were very disappointing against his former club in Paris Saint-Germain. So as you can see, having 3 Real Madrid players in my starting 11 was quite costly, and then not getting the captaincy right was yet another kind of error on my part. Donnarumma on my bench got 7 points as mentioned before, then Ignacio and Gano both eliminated and produced only 1 pointers in their 2-0 defeat against Chelsea, and Levi Colwill was suspended, but even in the semi-finals with 5 free transfers, I was able to get to 14 players quite comfortably, and with 6 free transfers, I can also get to similar numbers for the Club World Cup final, but I'm only interested in the starting 11. So after all of that, I actually got an even smaller green arrow than last time, so I broke my own personal record of any fantasy game for the smallest green arrow achieved, and I think this one was around 32, 38 places, something like that, so it's pretty much nothing, but I'd always take a green arrow over a red one, and I'm quite confident for matchday 7, I'll get an even bigger green arrow, and the aim will be to break into that top 10k for the first time in this tournament. And how am I going to achieve that? Well, the transfers are going to be pivotal, and with 6 available moves, I am still looking to optimize different areas, and some of them might just be designed to give me more funds to then buy those premiums in certain positions. One of them would be Fran Garcia out to Nuno Mendes, and my strategy will be to go all in on Paris Saint-Germain, who are the favourites to win this competition. They've got the better clean sheet odds as well, obviously, and I will be covering them towards the end of this podcast too. But I think Nuno Mendes is the second best PSG defender, and probably between both clubs as well, he would still be second in the rankings. But there's a big gap between him and Hakimi, who is undoubtedly the best option in this game, with 21 more points than Nuno Mendes. There is such a clear gap there. So if you had to pick between those two, Hakimi would win all day long. But Nuno Mendes has had a brilliant 2025. He's one of the contenders for the Ballon d'Or as well, and he does have attacking potential, which makes him enticing in this game too. I would also be looking to sell Malo Gusto to Marquinhos, because my plan is to go very heavy in the defensive line with a back 4 or possibly even a back 5. So in terms of formations, my current plan is to go for a 4-5-1 formation for the first time in quite a while, probably since the UCL Fantasy final that we got the year before last between Real Madrid and Borussia Dortmund, but he doesn't qualify for the scouting bonus. However, Lucas Beraldo does, and he only costs 4.3 million. So this is the best way of covering PSG defensively, with Hakimi being the clear standout, Nuno Mendes and Beraldo. But you can go for 4, whether it's Donnarumma in goal, Marquinhos at the back, maybe even both, and just going all in on Paris Saint-Germain. But going into other positions here, I think Dembele is the clear standout, the one that I don't have in my team, and it has been a big miss in the last couple of rounds, especially in the semi-final against Real Madrid, where Dembele had a great performance, got the goal and the assist. His pressing was also remarkable, and that's why he's a front runner for the Ballon d'Or, and it should be interesting how things pan out. But PSG could win 7 trophies in this year alone, and I think that really helps Dembele in his case. Jude Bellingham would make way. He was another massive disappointment in the Club World Cup. He did okay in the group stages, and I had him for matchday 3, but in the knockouts, I think having him was a big mistake, and having the likes of Arda Güler would have been much better actually, while saving me millions in the process. But Dembele is almost a must-have in the midfield, and he's a top captaincy option alongside Hakimi. Those two would stand out in particular, and without the maximum captain booster, it would be a big decision to make whether you go for the template pick of Hakimi and back that PSG clean sheet, or just kind of favour their attacking potential through Dembele, who has the highest ceiling of any Paris Saint-Germain attacker. But I am looking at Chelsea forwards too, and getting the lap in the forward line for Gano is also making a bit of sense to me, but this is only to fill up the numbers and use my free transfers. Nkunku will be another one, and I think he's the second best forward in this game overall. Joao Pedro is number 1, and also by quite a distance, but Nkunku should start this game against his former club, so selling Vinicius Jr. to Nkunku also gives me the funds necessary to buy Ousmane Dembele. So this is a very important transfer, but in terms of the lap, that wouldn't be as important, to be quite honest with you, and selling Gano in the process. With those 6 free transfers, this is my starting 11 for the Club World Cup final with a maximum captainship activated. So Donnarumma would be my choice of goalkeeper over Robert Sanchez, but you can balance things out a little bit more with maybe 6 PSG and 5 Chelsea, or vice versa. It all depends on your predictions for this game. So if you are backing the Blues from London to win, then go for more Chelsea assets, whether that's 7 or 8, and a balance is also definitely fine in this scenario. But I'm bullish on a PSG win here, and even a clean sheet is possible. My prediction is a 2-0 PSG victory, and that's why my entire defensive line is full of their defenders, with Hakimi and Nuno Mendes being the main fullbacks with attacking potential. Beraldo and Marquinhos are also there, with a bit of attacking threat in the case of Marquinhos from set pieces, but I don't think that's really realistic compared to someone like Hakimi. Beraldo is really there though for the scouting bonus, and hopefully his ownership remains on the 5%. It currently is around 2.3% at the time of this recording, so that will be one of my main differentials to go up in the mini leagues and the rankings, and that could be my entry point into the top 10k should PSG get the clean sheet and Beraldo gets 9 points overall. In the midfield, I've got the likes of Palmer, Pedro Neto, Doué, Kvaratskhelia and Dembele, so essentially these are the most attacking options that both PSG and Chelsea have to offer. But another consideration I'm looking at is maybe benching Pedro Neto for Cucurella. So if Chelsea keep a clean sheet, I've got that kind of safety net with a few points in the bag at least, and that could be my way of doing it. But you might argue it's better to bench a PSG defender instead. It's not worth going for Donnarumma and 4 PSG defenders. I understand that, but if the clean sheet happens for the Parisians, and they've done it multiple times in this tournament, only 1 goal conceded against Botafogo in their solitary loss, I think that will be a massive game changer, I think, compared to the others. And you want to be as different as possible in a lot of scenarios. I think in terms of the general Club World Cup fantasy manager, they won't be going for this sort of approach with 5 PSG defenders essentially, including Donnarumma in goal. But up front, there's only one man in Joao Pedro, who was brilliant in the semi-finals, and even in his debut against Palmeiras, he showed a lot of potential in that brief cameo, and I think he'll start in this final. I think there's no doubt about that, but he can also get 60 plus minutes, and I can't say the same thing about the other PSG or Chelsea forwards. I think Gonzalo Ramos would be a nice differential as an offensive option for Paris Saint-Germain, and in the midfield, I think from Chelsea and PSG, there are plenty of options who miss out, like Fabian Ruiz, Joao Neves, Vitinha, and Enzo Fernandez. They would be the clear standouts. I think between all of them, Fabian Ruiz is probably my favourite from open play, but Vitinha does have the penalty duties unless Kang-in Lee is on the pitch. Now on my bench, I've got a full 15-man squad, so plenty of options to choose from, and they're all from Chelsea. Robert Sanchez, both Levi Colwill and Liam Delap are now back from suspension, and Nkunku completes this final slot in my squad. And in terms of other forward options, Gonzalo Ramos is one of them, but also Nicholas Jackson, and I do favour Nkunku as the second best Chelsea forward and also forward in general from both clubs. But could Gonzalo Ramos come off the bench and make an impact? He definitely could. The same goes for Barcola, who had a great cameo in Matchday 6 against Real Madrid with a brilliant assist with a lot of trickery and flair shown on display. So I think you've got different ways of covering both teams, and that's where a chip like the Maximum Captain Booster can really help you, so you don't really need to make any captaincy decision there. And if someone a bit random scores the winning goal or gets that 10 to 15 pointer, it's all secured, and that can be your gateway into your final objective in terms of rank, whether it's the top 10k, 1k, 100, you name it. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Who are you captain for the Club World Cup final? My favourite options are Hakimi and Ousmane Dembele. I believe both of them are on another level compared to the rest. If you are favouring Chelsea, then Joao Pedro and Cole Palmer would be the top 2 from the Blues, and in general you can get some surprising clean sheets and goals from a defender like Marquinhos or Beraldo, for example, so you could get that massive return from somebody else, and that's where the maximum captainship could bail me out potentially, and I need it after some missed opportunities with that particular chip back in Matchday 1 and 6 as 2 notable examples. But let me now discuss different stats, ownership figures, fixtures and much more, so you've got the full picture for Matchday 7. It should come as no surprise to see Ousmane Dembele at the top of the goal scoring charts. These stats are taken by the website fantasyfootballpundit.com. differential.com. So these are the goal scorer odds for the Club World Cup final. After Dembele, we've got Gonzalo Ramos, but remember, this is with the assumption that all of these players will start, and I don't believe Ramos will be in that starting 11. Kvaratskhelia, Barcola and Doué are in the top 5. Then we've got some Chelsea players like Palmer, Jackson, Delap and João Pedro. I think João Pedro should be higher than the other Chelsea assets in my personal opinion. And Hakimi is in this top 10 list. A defender having an 18% chance of scoring in a final is absolutely crazy, and he's not too far off all of these Chelsea players overall. But Dembele is the closest, I think, to that 50% mark. It's quite high for a finalist, and I think Dembele's form has been sensational with that cameo appearance off the bench against Bayern Munich back in Matchday 5. I think from that point onwards, we saw that he was in the mood, sharp and ready to make an impact in the Club World Cup. But let's also take a look at the clean sheet probabilities. We only have 2 teams remaining, of course, and PSG have a 38% chance of keeping a clean sheet against Chelsea, whilst the Blues only have a 15% probability according to this website. And the same goes for the winner odds. PSG are the standouts as expected, with a 72.7% chance of winning the Club World Cup. Chelsea occupy the remaining percentage with 27.3% overall. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. That's what they're there for. The same goes for the Discord server and all the different social media platforms, which can be found in the description. And that concludes the final winner odds, clean sheet probabilities and goal scorer odds for the Club World Cup. And I will show these sorts of stats in Use Your Fantasy videos very soon. If you want to see ownership figures for FPL and Use Your Fantasy being highlighted, then let me know down in the comment section as well. But I think it's very important in Club World Cup Fantasy, especially for those at 5% or below ownership, so you can see who qualifies for the scouting bonus or not. But Donnarumma and Sanchez will definitely not do so. They are the only goalkeepers left in this competition who will start in Matchday 7, and Donnarumma is the favourite of the two, with 47% of Club World Cup Fantasy managers owning him, and we should expect over half of the overall managers to have Donnarumma between the sticks. Maybe they won't all start him, but I think he will be the most popular goalkeeper by some distance. Robert Sanchez has half of the ownership with 22.8% overall. In the defensive line, there is no surprise whatsoever that Hakimi has 69.6% ownership. That is absolutely outstanding, and this should be 70% very shortly. Nuno Mendes, Cucurella, Marquinhos, Reece James, Tosin Adarabioyo and Malo Gusto are the other defenders left in this competition with somewhat template ownership figures, and they will not qualify for the scouting bonus either. And the same goes for the midfielders, which you can see on screen. Kvaratskhelia is the most popular, but Cole Palmer is only narrowly behind. Ousmane Dembele, I think, is the best midfielder in general, and he should be your priority if you don't have him in your original team, which is definitely one of my regrets over the past 2 match days. Doué, Pedro Neto, Vitinha, Enzo Fernandez, João Neves, they are the other template picks. I think Fabian Ruiz is only just behind the likes of Musiala, who has been eliminated for quite a while, and I think Ruiz will get to 12% ownership very shortly and surpass some of these Bayern Munich midfielders and also those from Real Madrid. And the final position to cover is the forwards, and the only ones to really pick out here are Nkunku and Gonzalo Ramos, Delap as well, and João Pedro is also in the mix, but for some reason I don't think he's in these ownership figures and stats from that website, fantasyfootballpundit.com, and the next slide will show you all of these positions in general and the highest owned players. Hakimi is still top. We've got Kvaratskhelia in the top 5 as well, and the likes of Ousmane Dembele are quite low down in this list, but I think that injury from the group stages played a big part in him not being really template, talking about 40-50% ownership, but that could still be the case come match day 7 when that deadline finally hits. So the final is between Chelsea and PSG. We all know the obvious, and in terms of fixture analysis, there's nothing really to talk about except for the knockout stages and how these two teams got to the final. PSG beat Inter Miami 4-0. They also beat Bayern Munich 2-0, and the same goes for another heavy win against Real Madrid. We all thought that could be competitive and a high-scoring game, but not in that sort of way. With Chelsea, they beat Benfica 4-1 in extra time after they went down to 10 men, and against Palmeiras, they got the job done with a solid victory there, and the same goes against Fluminense, and they got a 2-0 win in the process. And Chelsea, only one defeat, which came in the group stages against Flamengo. PSG also lost to a Brazilian side in Botafogo, but both clubs won the other group stage games to finish, in the case of PSG anyway, top of their group. But the fact that Chelsea finished second actually played to their hands, because if they had finished top, they would have faced Bayern Munich instead of Flamengo, and then it would have been PSG in the quarterfinals instead. So sometimes you need some luck to win these cup competitions, and even though PSG are the favourites, I would not be ruling out Chelsea by any stretch of the imagination. And in terms of suspensions, PSG have 2 unavailable players who were granted permission to leave the squad in William Baccio and Lucas Hernandez. Both of them picked up red cards in the quarterfinals, and they are going to miss 2 games in the process. As for Chelsea, they have no suspensions now to report, so Jackson was available from a few games ago, and Delap and Colwill served a 1-game ban due to having 2 yellow cards in this tournament, and all yellow cards in general and bookings have been wiped out after the quarterfinals. So it's a clean slate, and that's why only those red cards from Baccio and Lucas Hernandez will affect any of the finalists in Matchday 7. There is still time to tinker, or in my case overthink, until the very end, so stay tuned for that deadline stream tomorrow, where I'll lock in my final transfers and squad for the Club World Cup final. But there are certain moves that will definitely happen, like Ousmane Dembele in the midfield. He is a sure starter for Matchday 7, but even if he was on the bench, I'd probably buy him because he can make an impact in a brief cameo. Nuno Mendes in the defensive line is also a sure transfer. The same goes for Lucas Beraldo as a differential PSG defender, and I think Cucurella would be another solid pick in that defensive line. But I could buy Fabian Ruiz to displace Pedro Neto in the midfield, and that would mean keeping Germán Cano and not buying Liam Delap, Gonzalo Ramos or Nicholas Jackson, because I'm only going to start 1 forward anyway, and if I wanted to go for a front 2, then Nkunku would partner João Pedro in that position. Then I could go for a 4-4-2 or a 3-5-2, but I'll be honest, I'm quite bullish on a 4-5-1 formation at the moment, and even a 5-4-1 isn't out of the question. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or find it insightful, then like this video, subscribe to my channel, and also the notification bell so you're always up to date with my Club World Cup Fantasy, FPL, and Champions League content. Follow me on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description for my Patreon and the Championships, for links to my videos, amongst many other perks. The Discord server, Club World Cup Fantasy League, and Spotify can also be found in the description. I'll see you tomorrow for the final Club World Cup Fantasy deadline stream of this tournament, and very soon FPL and UCL Fantasy will return.